All right, guys, Tuesday, March 24th, 2020. All right, let's just review these four problems up above. We're going to factor these binomials completely, these four right here. See if you can do these problems independently. Okay, you can pause the video if you need more time. All right, so let's take a look at number one. So 20x squared minus 4x. So I'm looking for what do they have in common. Well, let's just take the letters out first. Since this one has an x squared and this one has an x, they at least have an. Let me erase that really quick. They both have an x to factor out. Okay, but now I'm going to take a look at 20 and 4. What is the biggest number I can divide out of 20 and 4? 4. So the GCF of 20x squared and negative 4x is in fact 4x. So let's factor this out. 4x times what is 20x squared? That would be 5x. Okay, now 4x times what is negative 4x? That'd be negative 1. And you can check with the distributive property. Right. Now, 18x squared plus 14x. First things first, x and x squared, they have an x in common, so I'm going to take that out. All right. What can I take out of 18 and 14? What is the biggest factor I can divide out of both 18 and 14? Well, 2. So the biggest number I can, the greatest common factor of 18x squared and 14x is 2x. Now then, let's take a look. 2x times what is 18x squared? That'd be 9x. 2x times what is positive 14x? That would be positive 7. So the final factored form would be 2x times the quantity of 9x plus 7. 6x squared minus 21x. Let's factor out the biggest number that we can out of both terms. So once again, x squared, I'm going to take out an x. Okay. But what's the biggest number I can take out of 6 and 21? I can divide 6 and 21 both by 3. So now, 3x times what is 6x squared? It'd be 2x. 3x times what is negative 21x? Negative 7. You can check your work with the distributive property. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. 3x times negative 7 is negative 21x. Boom, boom. So this one I did twice because I want to ease everybody's anxiety. Oh my God, what's the GCF of 45x squared and 75x? Well, if it helps you to factor out piece by piece, once again, factor and factor until you cannot factor anymore. So right off the top of my head, let's just say I approach this in your shoes. I would get scared of this and say, okay, well, I know I can take out an x. They both have a digit of 5, so I know I can factor out a 5x. So then I've got 5x times what is 45x squared? That'd be 9x. 75x divided by 5x. So 5x times what is 75x? That would be 15. Can you guys see what's wrong with this picture? This is okay, but 9x plus 15 can be factored a little bit more. What can I take out of 9x and positive 15? I can take out a 3, because 9 and 15 both can be divisible by 3. 3 times what is 9x? 3x. 3 times what is positive 15? Positive 5. I'm just going to write 15. Positive 5. So 5x times 3 would be 15x times 3x plus 5. But let's say you knew that the GCF of 45 and 75 was 15. Well, then just get it right out of the gate. Factor out the 15x, and you're left with 15x times what is 45x squared? 3x. 15x times what is 75x? Positive 5. So you see how the GCF makes it all faster? In the end, what I want you guys to be able to do is factor and factor until you cannot factor anymore. And we're going to use the zero product principle to set it equal to 0 and solve for x. Note, I want all fractions to be completely reduced, or in their ended decimal form. So if it's 9 divided by 2, I want it simplified 9 over 2, or 4.5. Okay? All right, let's say, so now let's review the zero product principle. No, we are going to make this a little bit harder. So remember, the zero product principle states that if you have a multiplication problem, let's say a times b equals 0. So if you have a multiplication problem where the answer is 0 and all you have are the two variables, well then one of the factors has to be 0. So we need to account for both cases, or all cases, when you get to Algebra 2 and pre-calc and so on and so forth. So just to review, let's do these two problems. See if you can do these two problems independently by using the pause button. Okay? So, y plus 9 times y plus 9 times y minus 13 equals 0. Well, if we use the zero product principle, we know that y minus 13 equals 0, or y plus 9 equals 0. Oh, that's on the line. All right? So y plus 9 equals 0, or y minus 13 equals 0. Let's solve for y. Well, minus 9 on both sides, and we get y equals negative 9 is one of our solutions. Or y minus 13 equals 0. So I'm going to add 13 on both sides, and y equals 13. Well, that was easy. I love it when there's no coefficient in front of y. But I'm not always going to be a nice guy. So for example, I did this problem intentionally. 3n plus 11 times 8n minus 6 equals 0. So that being said, using the zero product principle, I know that these two can be factored out. So I got 3n plus 11 equals 0, or 8n minus 6 equals 0. So let's start with this problem. I'm going to subtract 11 from both sides. Hopefully I have enough space. 3n equals negative 11. So then I would recopy it. 3n equals negative 11. And then how do I get n isolated? I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So if I divide both sides by 3, that would get me n equals negative 11 over 3. Negative 11 thirds. That cannot be reduced. So just to get more space, I'm going to put 8n minus 6 equals 0 right here. So please make sure you have plenty of space. So 8n minus 6 equals 0. So I'm going to add I'm going to add 6 on both sides, getting me 8n equals 6. And now I'm going to divide both sides by 8, getting me n equals 6/8. But what's wrong with this picture? This can be reduced. 6/8 can be reduced by dividing the top and bottom by 2, so therefore n is actually equal to 3/4. you will not get 100% credit if your fraction is not simplified. So your two solutions are n equals negative 11/3 or n equals positive 3/4. Now, how does that apply to what we're learning? Luckily, I'm going to be a nice guy. So find the solution set. So you've got n squared plus 6n equals 0. And I can't help but think about when I was doing this in the 8th grade, and I was completely overwhelmed because I was always taught you get the variable isolated. So what I did in 8th grade, and again, don't copy this method, I just want to show you how my brain was working because I totally empathize with you guys, especially since I had a long head of hair back then. Oh, look at me, so handsome. So I'm going to do n squared plus 6n equals 0. And I'm going to intentionally mess this up, so don't copy this way. So I got, okay, n squared equals negative 6n, and then I went, well, n equals 0. I know that n equals 0 is one of the solutions, so I just said n equals 0, and I didn't get 100% correct, which is true. N does equal 0 in this case, because 0 squared equals negative 6 times 0, but I want to show you that the directions say find the solution set. N equals 0 is part of the solution set, but it's not the complete solution. So the question is, how do I actually do this? Well, step 1, factor. Notice the exclamation points. That is your biggest the most effective tool in your arsenal. And then split them apart using the zero product principle. The zero product principle is the factoring and zero product principle method is one of the most effective methods in Algebra 2 and Pre-Calc and Calc. So let's start with n squared plus 6n equals 0. So how do I actually do this? Factor. What is the GCF of 1 and 6? It's just 1. I can't really divide anything else besides 1. But do we have anything else in common? Yes. So I'm going to factor out n. So n times what is n squared? N. N times n is n squared. N times what is positive 6n? Check your work with the distributive property. Let me just make that parentheses a little bit closer. Check your work with the distributive property. N times n is n squared. N times positive 6 is positive 6n. We have factored successfully. Well, now what? Well, now split them apart using the zero product principle. Let me get my red. Actually, you know what? Green would be okay too. So I'm going to get my green, and I'm going to split them up into two cases. And you know what the best part about this is? 8th grade Matt was right. One of the solutions is n equals 0. But again, that's not the only solution because I have to account for n plus 6 equals 0. So how do I solve for n? I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. That gets me n equals negative 6. So the solution set, and you must put all of them. N can be 0 or n equals negative 6. And I wanted to put a problem right there, but I wanted to make sure. That's just my time. That's my microwave timer. That's not yours. That's my microwave timer to make sure to check my laundry. Anyway, check your work. Well, we said that n can be 0. Let's see if that works. So if I plug in n equals 0, so blank squared plus 6 times blank, 0 squared plus 6 times 0. What's 0 squared? That's 0. 6 times 0, 0. 0 plus 0 is 0, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to make sure that the output was 0. But let's check our work with the other way. If I do n equals negative 6, will that work? N squared plus 6n. Remember, the parentheses when we plug in make a significant difference. So if I plug in the calculator, parentheses negative 6 quantity squared, I'm going to get positive 36, because if I do negative 6 squared, I'm going to get negative 36. So remember, don't forget about the parentheses. The parentheses are your best friend. So negative 6 quantity squared, because we're plugging in for n, is positive 36. Wait, hold on. I didn't want blue, but anyway. I'm messing it up. I'll just leave it as it is. Positive 36. Positive 6 times negative 6 is negative 36. 36 minus 36 is 0, and that's what I wanted. There are two ways to get the solution set. I wanted this whole thing, n squared plus 6n, to equal 0. Two ways. See if you guys can do problem number 2 on your own. X squared plus 8x equals 0. Show the work. Let me give you guys 5 more seconds. Yeah, I'm not saying you have 5 seconds to do the problem. You have the pause button. I'm just reminding you. So now, let's do the problem. Sorry, I'm holding the iPad with my left hand. I need the pencil. So now, I'm going to look at this. Can I factor something out of x squared and 8x? Yeah, an x. So if I factor out x times what is x squared? X. X times what is positive 8x? X times x is x squared. X times 8 is 8x. We have factored. We have successfully done the reverse of the distributive property. But now we're going to use the zero product principle, which states I can break this up into two cases. So x equals 0, woohoo, I don't have to do any work. Or x plus 8 equals 0. Got to do a little bit of algebra, it's not going to hurt you. So how do I get x isolated? I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. Gets me x equals negative 8. So my two solutions are x equals 0 or x equals negative 8. Don't believe me? You can always check your work back into the equation. So our first solution, yet again, was x equals 0. So I'm going to check x equals 0. 0 squared plus 8 times 0, I get 0 squared, which is 0. 8 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is the exciting 0. That's what we wanted all along. We wanted to see what values of x make the statement true. So let's check the other method. So I'm going to check x equals negative 8. So let's plug in negative 8 quantity squared plus 8 times negative 8. Remember, negative 8 quantity squared, that's negative 8 times negative 8. That is positive Nintendo 64. And then positive 8 times negative 8 would be negative 64. 64 minus 64 is in fact 0. There are two ways to get the output to be 0. Okay? I'm going to give you guys 2 more problems and then we'll call it a day. So once again, what can I take out of a squared and negative 5a? If you want to do this problem independently, feel free. Hit the pause button. So now, what can I take out? I'm going to factor out a. A times what is a squared? I'm going to factor out an a. A times what is negative 5a? So this whole thing becomes a times the quantity of a minus 5 equals 0. So I'm going to break that up. Oh, isn't that nice? I don't have to work. A equals 0 is one of the solutions. Or a minus 5 equals 0. And how do I solve for a? I'm going to add 5. I had to burp. Add 5 on both sides. And we get a equals 5. Check your work. If I plug in 0, because one of the solutions is a equals 0. And the other solution is a equals 5. Okay, so let's do the first one. The exciting 0 squared minus 5 times 0. 0 squared is 0. Minus 5 times 0. You still get 0. Woohoo! But then you get a equals 5. 5 squared is 25. Negative 5 times positive 5 is negative 25. You get 0 as well. You get two solutions to solving this equation. All the values of the variable that make this statement true. See if you guys can do number 4 independently, and that's it. C squared minus 7c equals 0. Okay, so we are going to factor out the GCF c. C times what is c squared? C. C times what is negative 7c? So the factored form becomes c times the quantity c minus 7 equals 0. So I'm going to break this up into two cases. Woohoo, I don't have to work. C equals 0. Or c minus 7 equals 0. So then I've got c minus 7 equals 0. I'm going to add 7 on both sides, getting me c equals 7. I'm going to check my work. If I plug in c equals 0, I get 0 squared. Sorry, c equals 7 right here. So I'm going to check my work. 0 squared is 0. Negative 7 times 0 is, well, it's just, yeah, it could have been positive or negative, but the point is if I plug it in, I'm going to get a 0 output. But then if I plug in c equals 7, 7 squared is going to be 49. Negative 7 times positive 7 is also, oh, in this case, negative 49. So 49 minus 49 is 0. Check. We're going to be doing harder examples on the next class period. I believe today's Tuesday, so we're going to have Thursday. So have a day off from algebra tomorrow, and I'll see you guys on Thursday. Stay healthy.